After the redemption arc was complete, I ended up with the tragic heroine Isabella. But in our third year of marriage, she grew quiet around me, her nights stretching later and later. I knew her heart had changed. She had fallen for her young, handsome assistant, the one who was always clinging to her, and she wanted to give him a life. I didn't get angry. I simply asked her for one more month, a month to reclaim our memories one by one. During that month, she left me to heal on my own. I swiftly consolidated the company, divided the assets, and transferred all the resources. In the end, as she stared in stunned disbelief, I politely showed her the door, both from our company and our home. It's hilarious, really. I'm the hero of a redemption story. If I have the power to save others, how could I possibly let myself sink into the mud? When Isabella was kicked out, the look on her face was one of pure shock. Just an hour earlier, in front of the corporate headquarters, she had received the news of her dismissal by the board of directors. She tried to go back to the home she shared with her little lover, but her fingerprints had already been erased from the security system of the downtown New York penthouse. I had cleared out all of Isabella's belongings a week ago, packing them up and sending them to Oak Creek, where they were received by the housekeeper she had hired for Julian. She hadn't been coming home much for the past 6 months anyway, keeping most of her daily clothes at the place she had set up for him. For the last 2 months, she had even taken Julian on business trips that were actually vacations, holding the hand of her assistant 5 years her junior as they walked through every single place that held memories of us. Isabella had said that just as I needed to clear away my memories, she needed to say goodbye to her past. Her way of saying goodbye was to bring along a boy who looked a bit like my younger self to replace me, to become the new owner of our shared history. At this point, I couldn't tell how much of Isabella's past feelings for me were genuine. There was a time when she loved me so much she would have died for me, but now I realized she seemed to love the novelty of falling into the same passionate romance with different people even more. In her original story as the tragic heroine in a tearjerker novel, she was destined to devote her life to the male lead and die alone. I saved her from that, gave her a happy ending. It seems that's when the story began to sour. The allure of the tragic heroine lies in her unwavering devotion to the hero. Readers can't help but fantasize about what they would do if they received such devotion, but reality is often the same. Once she was freed from her predetermined role, no longer the self-sacrificing heroine, she became just like any other woman, capable of greed and anger, of lying and changing her heart. When I chose to stay for her after my mission was complete, we walked down the aisle hand in hand, building a life and a home together. A novel would have ended there, but life is not a novel. We had a period of fiery passion after the wedding, but then life settled into a quiet routine. She was still busy with her career, and I wasn't content to be a house husband. Isabella's mother often complained, saying no man I knew neglected his home like I did after getting married. She was dissatisfied that even though Isabella provided such a superior material life for me, I couldn't take care of Isabella's every need. Her face bore no resemblance to the kind old woman who, when she was gravely ill and penniless, held my hand in the hospital and repeatedly sighed with relief that Isabella had me. Years of living in luxury had raised her standards. She increasingly felt I wasn't good enough for Isabella. But no matter how much she looked down on me, she couldn't change the facts. In the company Isabella and I founded together, we each held 50% of the power. Though we were husband and wife, our teams within the company formed different factions, maintaining a delicate balance through healthy competition. Over the years, the company's market value soared, as did our personal fortunes. Everything was heading in the right direction. Isabella's dark past, the childhood shadows of being bullied and living under someone else's roof, was fading away. Perhaps life had become too comfortable, or perhaps Isabella just had a type, but in the third year of our marriage, she cheated. The girl whose eyes once burned with passion as she professed her love for me over and over again changed her heart without any warning. That young man, Julian, caught her eye shortly after he started as an intern. In just 6 months, he was promoted to her personal assistant. During those 6 months, Isabella and I were already in a cold war. In the heat of an argument, we had thrown harsh words at each other, agreeing to go our separate ways and not interfere in each other's lives. Everyone expected me to get jealous, to fight with the young man over love, but I just poured more energy into my work. My home life was a mess, and since the root of the problem wasn't me, I couldn't afford to let my career slide and be dragged down with it. I hadn't wanted to deal with Isabella anymore, but her actions were becoming too conspicuous. It was our company, after all, and a scandal would do me no good. I finally couldn't resist saying something to her. At that time, I was still quite confident that I was the one Isabella loved most. The years we had struggled together were too profound. We were not just lovers, but comrades in arms. But Isabella's response was nonchalant. She said seeing the ambition in that young man's eyes reminded her of our past. We had suffered so much back then, so now she couldn't help but want to give Julian a hand. I understood the subtext in her words and said no, my face impassive. It was from that moment that I started to be more cautious with her in business. It's not a simple task to sever ties with a company you built from the ground up. I remained calm on the surface, but my actions behind the scenes never stopped. During this process, I gave Isabella chances, but she never reined it in. Julian needed her help more and more. Eventually, she even bought him a villa in Beverly Hills, creating a love nest for them. For some reason, Isabella didn't try to hide any of this from me. When I first came to this world to win her over, I had revealed my identity to her. She knew I could never go back, that I had to stay in this world by her side. She started coming home less and less. On the rare occasions we did cross paths, she would say with a mocking, "Oh, so you decided to come home too? You know, sometimes I wonder if you really came here for me. It feels like you've always cared more about money than me." She dropped this line like an ultimatum before walking out the door. She was blaming me for not wanting to be a stay-at-home husband, for remaining in the business world as her rival even after we became successful. But back when we had nothing but our lives, it was my methods, my ambition, my ability that were the very things that could save her. She knew that, but she felt secure. I ignored Isabella's provocations to prevent her from discovering I was transferring assets. I had to pressure her at work, cornering her at every turn in the company. Just when I thought we would part ways peacefully after everything was settled, something unexpected happened. It was on a sunny afternoon. Isabella and I were wearing our wedding rings for an interview with a financial magazine. The reporter asked about many of the amusing stories from our early passionate days. Isabella smiled and answered, playing the part of a devoted wife perfectly for the camera. Julian was there, too, off camera. His dejected eyes darted between our ring fingers again and again until his gaze finally dimmed completely. The interview didn't end perfectly. When the reporter mentioned the fiery vows Isabella had made when she proposed to me, Julian couldn't take it anymore. He turned and stormed out of the studio. In front of the camera, Isabella's expression changed instantly. She stood up, not even bothering to grab her jacket from the chair, and chased after him without a care for her image. On that day, everyone witnessed the passion on Isabella's face. She was like a young girl in the throes of first love, burning with sincere affection, unafraid of gossip. And I was the one left to clean up the mess she created. I looked at the script she had left on the table, which still had the famous vows from her proposal printed on it. Every girl is destined to fall in love 1,000 times over with the boy who saves her from the darkness. But Isabella will exist only for Alexander forever. Yes, in a romance story, the maiden remains faithful to her young man. But after the story ends, all that's left for the star-crossed lovers of the world is the reality of life from which no one is exempt. I just hoped Isabella would become even more infatuated and foolish. The years of comfort had eroded her sense of crisis, and many on the board were already dissatisfied with her. She was still immersed in her passionate affair, blithely assuming that she and I were a single entity of interest and that I would handle all the negative press for her. That evening, Isabella came home with a prepared divorce agreement. "We can get the divorce certificate first," she said, sitting across from me, speaking in a calm, businesslike tone. "We'll suppress the news for a while. Releasing it now would affect the company's stock price." She wasn't negotiating. She was giving orders. The tragic heroine, so accustomed to relying on me for everything, was now, even in divorcing me, still used to dumping her messes in my lap. "Alexander," she said, "I used to love you very much. Your calm and rationality helped me through many difficulties, but sometimes I feel you're more of a reliable partner. People don't see their comrades in arms as their bedfellows. Before, we only had each other and could only see each other. Now, I know what true love is. She claimed my love had too strong a purpose. First to win her over, then for wealth, power, and status. She said she had been running forward her whole life, never having a chance to stop and feel true love. Now, she wanted to make up for that regret. I calmly watched the person before me, listening as she detailed her infatuation with another boy and her accusations against me, my mind preoccupied with the assets I had already moved. 6 months ago, I had already started a new company in my mother's name. There were still a few procedures to complete, but it was mostly done. But looking at Isabella, who was still berating me, I changed my mind. Rather than just taking my assets and leaving, I now wanted to kick her out. Agreeing to the divorce now with a seemingly fair 50-50 split of assets would be letting her off too easily. After all, I was the one who had contributed most of the capital and effort to build this company. As for Isabella's small contribution, it should be considered compensation for what she'd done to me. Seeing my expression, I feigned some hesitation and asked softly, "Does it have to be so sudden?" My words seemed to amuse her. A sarcastic smile appeared on Isabella's face. "We've been in a cold war for so long. You were the one who wouldn't back down before. What? You regret it now?" I lowered my eyes and said nothing, letting her take it as a yes. Seeing that I didn't argue back as usual, Isabella was momentarily stunned, then let out a soft laugh. "Let's get this over with quickly," she said. "The poor boy feels insecure being with me, without any official status. He can't wait, and I don't want him to feel insecure." Yes, she was always like this when she favored someone. I always knew. Fortunately, I had long since given up any hope for Isabella. If there were any feelings left, they had been worn away by her indulgence of Julian and his repeated provocations over the past 6 months. Otherwise, I would have been deeply hurt by now. I could separate her from the person who once loved me. The old Isabella was much thinner and more fragile, her brow always furrowed with a gloom that never lifted, a far cry from the glamorous woman she was now. But that Isabella would silently search through every relevant book in the library just to find a single page of notes I had forgotten in a book, all because of a single sentence I'd said. When she handed me the notes, I was stunned. I had already gotten the notes from a classmate, but she stood there, her lips pressed tightly together, insisting I take the paper she offered because it was the only thing she could do for me back then. And so, I was with her from our student days to our current success. I nurtured her like a flower, bit by bit, transforming her into the confident, poised woman she was today. A pity that once the flower bloomed, it was picked by someone else. I told Isabella we could get a divorce, but she had to give me 1 more month. She asked what I planned to do. I just lowered my eyes and mumbled something about needing to sort through memories of the past. This answer seemed to startle her. Since our 2nd year of marriage, after we gave up on adopting a child, we had been interacting like colleagues, all business. It had been a long time since we had said anything so openly sentimental to each other. She pursed her lips as if about to say something sarcastic, but a flicker of pity crossed her eyes. Isabella agreed to my proposal, but on the condition that we live separately starting today. "This is Julian's request, too," she said, her face softening into an almost doting, helpless expression. "He's not like you. He depends on me. His eyes are full of me. I've spoiled him, made him possessive, and I don't want him to feel even a little bit slighted." I had no time for her sentimental musings. I shut the door without a second thought, showing her out. That night, I received a text from Julian. He was gloating, a victor flaunting his prize, telling me that Isabella would be taking him out of town for the next month. They were going on a trip. I asked Isabella if this counts as an early honeymoon, he wrote. She said I have a one-track mind, but she didn't deny it. As if texting couldn't convey the full extent of his triumph, Julian called me, emphasizing the word honeymoon. Hearing this, I couldn't help but let out a low laugh. "Have a great time," I said. "I hope you get completely lost in your love for each other. The deeper the better." After all, the memories I needed to reclaim weren't just the emotional ones that had turned sour, but everything tangible I had given her over the years. The first thing I needed to settle with Isabella was the company's resources. For years, Isabella had been in charge of internal decisions while I brought in most of the clients. Over the past 6 months, I had spent a lot of time networking, gradually moving client resources to my new company, but the new brand's reputation wasn't fully established yet, and people still preferred to work with the established brand we had built together. Now, Isabella's self-destructive behavior was a gift from heaven. 5 days after Isabella left, I deliberately leaked the news that we were getting a divorce. There had only been speculation in the company before, but now I had confirmed it myself. Isabella's trusted assistant sensed something was wrong and tried frantically to contact her, but Isabella didn't respond. I had merely hinted to Julian that I was planning to use our shared history to win Isabella back, and he clung to her even tighter. On the 5th day, I timed a call to Isabella perfectly. A few vague, ambiguous words were enough to send Julian into a jealous rage. He confiscated Isabella's phone, pestering her to ignore all electronic devices. Isabella indulged him. Apart from assigning some work to her assistant before she left, she really did stop checking in on the company. Of course, it wasn't that she didn't care. When her assistant asked what to do if problems arose at the company during her absence, her reply was, "Go to Alexander. The company is our baby. He would never let anything happen to it." The assistant was stunned by her arrogant confidence, but Isabella was unfazed. "You don't know him," she said. "He loves me. If he can't save our home, he'll be even more determined to save our company." You see, when it came to my love for her, Isabella was even more confident than I was, and so she confidently went off the grid, probably still in that small town that had trapped her entire childhood. Julian was likely clinging to her, listening to her tell stories of our past over and over before gently cooing. "You have me now. I'll do better than him. I'll love you more than he ever did." Finally, after Isabella had been out of contact for a second week, her team defected. A divorce is no small matter. The financial interests involved are immense. With Isabella now madly in love and playing the disappearing act, the projects under her team's control were nearly all snatched away. The loss of revenue from these projects was temporary, but Isabella's current unprofessional attitude was what truly disheartened everyone. In fact, the day before Isabella handed me the divorce papers, Julian had been telling everyone that she was divorcing me. Combined with my vague responses over the past few days, the entire company knew a major change was coming. In such a situation, how could Isabella be absent? Everyone is just trying to make a living. No one wants to follow a lovesick, incompetent boss. Thanks to some confidential documents brought over by her former confidant, the board's opinion of Isabella plummeted, and I also received some unexpected windfalls. Right now, I was sitting in front of a major shareholder, watching his face darken as he failed to reach Isabella. I feigned distress and said, "Perhaps she's avoiding me. We are getting a divorce, after all. But business should never be mixed with personal feelings. Even a rookie should know that." We said no more, our gazes meeting in a shared understanding. To be honest, when I first discovered Isabella's affair, I did some self-reflection. At that time, we had been in a Cold War for nearly 6 months after giving up on adopting our first child. The reason was simple. The child was chosen by Isabella's mother. My previous reluctance had made her distrust my willingness to genuinely adopt the child, so she bribed our household staff to add folk remedies she got from somewhere to my food every day. She was convinced that if I kept taking them, it would bring good fortune to her family. She was obsessed, almost fanatical. Despite my careful attempts to avoid it, I couldn't escape it. My body started having problems due to these so-called health supplements. A doctor later told me the drugs had caused permanent damage. Isabella's mom had ground up some bizarre herbs and mixed them into my meals from the very first day we decided to adopt. I stormed into her house and caused a huge scene. That time, Isabella stood in front of her tearful mother and asked me when I was going to stop. In her eyes, her mother had acted out of good intentions. If it weren't for my increasingly poor attitude towards her mother after we got married, she wouldn't have resorted to such extreme and secretive measures. "We can have other children," she had said, her voice laced with impatience. "We have a long future ahead of us." Looking at her then, she felt like a stranger. Isabella was abducted by traffickers as a child and sold to a small village. There, she was starved, poorly clothed, and forced to work by her cruel adoptive mother. This led to a twisted, insecure personality. Later, she was found and returned home, but only her seriously ill mother was left by then. I was already in her life. Finding her family did nothing to improve her situation. She still couldn't afford tuition and living expenses, and even had to find time to earn money for her mother's medical bills. In the past, Isabella and I took turns caring for her mother in her sickbed. Back then, Her mother was so afraid of losing a devoted fool like me from her daughter's life, she acted so kind, so gentle to both of us. She even tried to kill herself so as not to be a burden, but Isabella and I saved her in time. Her mother's willingness to sacrifice herself finally allowed Isabella to experience a long overdue sense of motherly love and family. From that day on, she vowed to make sure the two people she loved most would have a good life. Well, she didn't forget her promise, but she only fulfilled half of it. Her mother remained one of the most important people in her world, but the other one was no longer me. But it didn't matter anymore. After going through that almost unbearable pain and confusion, one day outside Isabella's office, I saw her being intimate with Julian. When he turned his head, I saw a hint of my own reflection in his handsome young face. In that moment, it all became clear. It had come to this simply because of human nature. When you have something good, you always want something younger. There aren't that many stand-ins and first loves in the world. People just love what they love, and they stick to their type. Once I stopped expecting anything from Isabella, she sensed my indulgence, and her affair became blatant. She even flaunted it in front of me, using a lover to threaten me, to make me angry and fearful, hoping I would eventually surrender, give up everything in the company, and return to a domestic life. I found it absurd. If having a lover was that effective, I would have bought a dozen for my business rivals. I am not a fool. I was willing to help the pitiful Isabella rise up, but I was not willing to be dragged into the mud by a greedy Isabella. Her tactics couldn't threaten me. They only made me run faster and act more ruthlessly. Now, with the 1-month deadline approaching, Julian must have felt secure enough to let Isabella have her phone back. She first saw the numerous missed calls from her assistant and the major shareholders and quickly called back, but no one was giving her a straight answer anymore. A few who were on good terms with her vaguely advised her to come and apologize to me to calm my anger. Isabella misunderstood. She thought I was jealous of Julian and throwing a public tantrum. After failing to get any useful information, she sent me a text. She said she was at our old high school, and the beautiful scenery reminded her of our past. The hint of regret in her words made her think she could keep me hanging for another 10 days or so. What a joke. Who had time for her now? I screenshotted her text and sent it to Julian, adding a note hoping he could keep a better eye on Isabella. If he were truly capable, Isabella wouldn't be having second thoughts while she was with him. The good thing about young guys is their pride. They're easily provoked and quick to act. That same evening, I learned from my assistant that Isabella had postponed her return trip. Those in the company who were eagerly awaiting her return to take charge would likely lose all hope after tonight. The thought put me in an excellent mood. I enjoyed a rare cigar and went to bed early. I dreamed of the 18-year-old girl blushing as she sat beside me, singing a love song. "Alexander," she asked, "will we be together forever?" No, I wanted to tell her. You cheated. You were the first one to change. When two people who once loved each other deeply separate, there will inevitably be a painful tearing apart. The one who betrays true love deserves 1,000 cuts, and I, Alexander, will always love myself first. Isabella did eventually come back. She looked genuinely regretful now, but the trip with Julian hadn't been as blissful as his social media posts suggested. Julian had some issues of his own, something I saw more clearly than Isabella. She had admired the drive in him, thinking it was similar to mine. Unfortunately, he channeled that drive in the wrong direction. I used mine to build a career. He used his to chase women. So far, Julian's life had been smooth sailing. Isabella liked him from the moment they met. In their relationship, he had almost always been the victor, condescendingly accepting the treasures Isabella laid at his feet. But now, in his eyes, Isabella was wavering. Just when he thought he had it all figured out, she started contacting me, reminiscing about our past. To Julian, this was a betrayal. He could no longer act smart and understanding. Isabella was exhausted from his drama. When she sat across from me again, her face was etched with fatigue. "Looks like your trip wasn't so pleasant, Isabella," I said in a great mood, as I handed her the newly drafted divorce agreement, even managing to joke a little. Isabella gave a bitter smile. She was about to say something, but her eyes fell on the clause in the agreement demanding she leave with nothing. She looked up, her gaze accusatory, as if she thought I was being ridiculous. She tossed the thin papers aside, leaned back on the sofa, and called my name in a tone that was almost petulant. I promised to compensate you as much as I could, but Alexander, you're too greedy, she said. No, I think this is just right, I replied with a faint smile. After all, everything you have, I gave to you. It's only fair that I take it all back. This struck a nerve. Isabella's face darkened instantly. After becoming a boss, she hated it when people brought up our past. In that story, she was always the one receiving my help. But to maintain her image as a family-oriented woman, she had to endure the frustration and often say, "Without Alexander, I wouldn't be where I am today." But she didn't believe that in her heart. Just like now. She looked at me, her eyes narrowed, her voice laced with a threat. "Alexander, you know that's impossible." "How is it impossible?" I replied with a smile. "I consulted with Daniel beforehand. His wife is a lawyer, and she supports me in this." Isabella's face changed color instantly. She tried to lunge forward, but was stopped by the 4 bodyguards I had hired. She could only sit back down, her expression shifting uncertainly. Daniel was her friend. Over the years, Isabella had siphoned a lot of money from the company through fraudulent contracts, much of which went to bribe Daniel. The amount she had embezzled was enough to land her in prison for 7 or 8 years. Thanks to Isabella's past recklessness and her habit of making subordinates take the fall, her former confidant, after switching sides, had spilled everything she had done. We were in perfect agreement. Neither of us wanted Isabella to have a chance at a comeback. Right now, Isabella didn't know how much evidence I had. She didn't want to sign, so I held up my phone. "I've already arranged for someone to report you," I told her. "They're just waiting for my call to submit the materials." She had no choice. To placate me, she signed the divorce agreement. We went to the city hall to file for divorce, which was followed by a 1-month cooling-off period. Isabella wore a dark expression the entire time. When I let her go, the first thing she did was pull out her phone to ask her confidant about the current situation. Apparently, the response was satisfactory. After hanging up, Isabella even had the nerve to turn back and smile at me. "Alexander, you were bluffing." At the same time, my phone buzzed with a message. "Bro, I told her exactly what you asked me to." Seeing this, I smiled back. Isabella was about to say something else when a car horn blared nearby. The window rolled down, revealing Julian's triumphant face. Just as Isabella was about to walk towards him, she suddenly stopped. She leaned in and whispered in my ear, "Alexander, I was serious about the message I sent you. I don't have to choose him." Then she hurried away. I knew she was rushing to check on the company's situation. A short while later, a message came through. The person on the other end told me that after arriving at the company, Isabella had aggressively demanded back several projects I had already taken over. After realizing that things were still within her control, she visibly relaxed, but she didn't let her guard down. She started contacting her business partners and then called a meeting with her confidant. Although the assistant had told her, as I instructed, that I had only heard rumors and had no concrete evidence, she was still afraid I had something on her. Even after cleaning up her tracks, she was still uneasy. When we were allies, I couldn't earn her respect, but the thought of being my enemy terrified her. In the end, she was just banking on the fact that I had come for her, that I was the hero sent by the system specifically to save her. My past love and indulgence had given her too much confidence. I was the only salvation for the helpless Isabella of the past. I was the one who, out of millions, would always choose her. That's why she thought even now that I should be completely devoted to her. Isabella wanted to make a thunderous comeback, but the board no longer trusted her. Realizing this, she began to desperately try to salvage the situation. If I were Isabella, after erasing all traces of my misdeeds, I would have retaliated against anyone who could threaten me with everything I had. But Isabella wasn't me. She was used to being the boss, to commanding everything from on high. She had lost her former ruthlessness and drive. Besides, in her mind, things weren't that bad yet. The quickest and least costly method she could think of was to win me back. A week after we signed the divorce papers, Isabella, believing she had stabilized the company, began to frequently ask me out. Although I always refused, she remained convinced that she still held the power in our relationship. She discreetly found out my recent schedule and started showering me with attention. Julian had already quit his job. He moved into the downtown penthouse that Isabella had bought in her mother's name, content to wait to become a rich man. For a moment, it seemed our roles had reversed. Before, Isabella revolved around him at the company, Now she was revolving around me. The difference was Julian's social circle was so small that even after Isabella had been trying to win me back for half a month, he was still in the dark. I had to help him, so I told my assistant that the next time Isabella sent flowers, he should take a picture of the card and send it to Julian. That evening, I accepted Isabella's invitation. She took me to a restaurant she had always said she wanted to take me to. Right now, she was sitting across from me, and I couldn't tell if it was my imagination, but she seemed a little nervous. Back when we were so poor we couldn't afford to eat, I swore that one day when I made it, I would bring you here for a date, she said, turning to look at the city lights outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, a touch of melancholy in her voice. I never thought that by the time the wish came true, everything would be so different. This rooftop restaurant was in the most prosperous part of the city. From the 38th floor, you could see the best view of the entire city. Isabella was silent at that moment. I didn't know if she was thinking about the 3 years she spent chasing me or the summer nights we walked hand in hand. But whatever it was, her mind was now only filled with the glitz and glamour of the metropolis. I was not the one who had lost my way. This was the first time Isabella had brought me here, but I was already used to it, not even interested enough to turn and look. In the past, when I was trying to close deals with clients, I would book this place to show my sincerity. The view from the 38th floor is beautiful. I often drank here until my stomach ached so much I couldn't stand up straight. Isabella didn't share in that suffering, so she didn't deserve to enjoy these benefits. Seeing my lack of reaction, Isabella's lips twitched. She signaled the waiter who was standing by, and just as she was about to present her gift, a figure walked straight to our table. In front of Isabella, he calmly picked up a glass of water and poured it over her head. It was Julian. He was still dressed impeccably, befitting his youth and energy, but his expression was cold. Facing the drenched Isabella, he spoke, his voice cold and deliberate. "You regret it, don't you? Why did you bring him here? This is where you confessed your love to me. Why would you defile our love like this?" Hearing this, I raised an eyebrow and looked at Isabella with a smirk. Isabella's face was ashen. Her gaze finally landed on Julian, and she spoke through gritted teeth. "What are you doing? Go home." But Julian broke down. "I had a good career, Isabella. You're the one who seduced me. You wanted me to be your lover." He pointed at her, his voice filled with despair. "You wanted to lock Alexander up at home and have an affair with me at the office, but you couldn't lock him up, so you locked me up at home and went after him. How can you be so cheap?" A sharp slap from Isabella cut off Julian's words. He stared at her, his eyes wide and misty with disbelief, but Isabella just looked at him coldly and asked if he had calmed down. Her tone was indifferent, as if the person she had just slapped wasn't the lover she had cherished just 2 months ago. "Alexander and I haven't gotten our divorce certificate yet," she said, shielding me behind her, not letting me get involved. Her polite and gentle demeanor only made her seem more disgusting. "You're playing the part of the main partner a little too early." Julian let out a scream and ran off like a madman. Isabella didn't chase him. She straightened her clothes and, still soaking wet, picked up her knife and fork as if nothing had happened. She smiled at me and said, "Let's continue." I laughed too. "Isabella, I want to slap you." And with that, I stood up and slapped her across the face. I shook my hand and smiled at her. "Sorry, my hand just has a mind of its own." Then I turned to leave. Behind me, Isabella started to laugh. Her head was turned to the side from the slap, but she looked happy. "Alexander, you do care," she said. "These past few days, I've been thinking about our past. I don't think I'm happy about losing you." I had no patience for her nonsense and walked away. Isabella got up to follow, but then screams erupted from outside. It was Julian threatening to jump off the building, demanding that Isabella come and comfort him or he would jump. Isabella eventually went to deal with Julian. As for me, I walked away quickly, almost running. Isabella was disgusting and Julian was sick. They were best off entangled with each other for the rest of their lives. I hoped that once Isabella lost her luxury cars, her mansion, and her CEO title, they would still be shackled together for life. I don't know how that night's drama ended, but many of the wealthy wives in our circle frequented that restaurant, and the story about Isabella spread like wildfire the next day. Everyone at the company looked at Isabella differently. She, however, had a good attitude and acted completely unaffected. During work hours, she still tried to come to my office to talk to me, but I had long since changed the password. All her contact methods were blocked, so she could only find my assistant and ask him to convey her feelings of longing for me. After 3 years as a high and mighty CEO, it had been a long time since Isabella had humbled herself like this. When I didn't respond, she even had the audacity to have her assistant tell me that the things I had used to threaten her, she had actually cleaned up long ago. The only reason she was still coming to me now was because she realized she truly loved me. That month, I went traveling with Julian, she had said. We went to many of the places you and I had been to. I thought I was just blinded by the beauty of the past, that what I felt for you wasn't love. But then I realized if the person standing next to me isn't you, it just doesn't feel right. Alexander, I really do still love you. When I came back, I wanted to win you back, but you wouldn't even give me a chance to speak. She sounded aggrieved. My assistant, and I felt sick listening to it. I had the assistant send a recording of her words to Julian. Julian had learned his lesson. He blocked me, trying to numb himself by cutting off all information. I had my assistant use different numbers to send it to him. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He stormed into the company that afternoon and caused a huge scene in Isabella's office. My assistant went to eavesdrop and came back muttering, "Isabella isn't even officially divorced yet. How can he be telling everyone she's pregnant?" "Hey man," he said, "why are you smiling so happily?" "Oh, nothing," I said. "I just thought of something funny." The thought that any child Isabella had would be barred from civil service jobs just made me smile. With the cards on the table, Julian's possessiveness exploded. He no longer stayed quietly at home, but clung to Isabella even tighter. Isabella had been trying to salvage her reputation at the company, but now it was even worse. She no longer had the energy to bother me. Time dragged on until the cooling-off period ended. On the day we were supposed to get the divorce certificate, she dragged her feet for a long time. It wasn't until I unblocked her and sent her a message telling her that if she spent 2 years in prison, I could still sue for divorce on the grounds of separation, that she reluctantly showed up. The moment she saw me, her eyes turned red. "Alexander, I dreamed about our past again," she said, her voice trembling. "I can't tell anymore if people like me because I'm Isabella or because I'm the CEO. Back when I wasn't a CEO, you were the only one who was good to me. I was blinded by money and power. I was wrong. Alexander, can you give me another chance?" she pleaded with me, refusing to step into the city hall. I could only look towards Julian, who had been following her. Julian rushed over to hit me, but was grabbed by my bodyguards. He started wailing. "Isabella, are you just going to watch them bully me like this?" Isabella's face darkened. I sneered. "You better hurry up, Isabella. If your precious boy gets hurt, you'll be heartbroken." At my words, Isabella closed her eyes in pain. In the end, I got the divorce certificate. As we parted ways at the city hall entrance, Isabella was still reluctant. She looked at me, her eyes full of longing. "Alexander, if it's possible." "No, it's not possible," I said with a cheerful smile. "Isabella, considering I suffered with you in the past only for someone else to reap the rewards, it's only fair that it's now your turn to suffer." Hearing this, Isabella's face went white. At that moment, she finally woke up and realized the gravity of the situation. She quickly contacted her secretary and rushed to the company, but when she got there, she learned she had been fired by the board. Her former secretary came to see her off, politely asking her to leave and advising her not to be so high-profile. Isabella tried to contact me again. She didn't deserve to. I was CEO Alexander now. She was just little Isabella. "You need an appointment to call my private number." Realizing I was serious, Isabella calmed down quickly. Perhaps she had a premonition of what was to come. She chose to stand on the side of the road and call Julian, her voice as gentle as it used to be. They got a marriage certificate as quickly as possible. Isabella then gave Julian a long list of instructions on how to care for her mother. Julian, lost in the joy of his impending wealth, agreed perfunctorily. But it wasn't long before their mansion was foreclosed on, and they lost all their luxury cars and properties. It wasn't until Isabella was summoned by the court and then taken away by the police in front of him that he realized his wife was no longer a CEO. The moment Isabella saw her secretary testify against her, she understood. I had all the evidence of her financial crimes. There was no escaping the prison sentence that awaited her. To leave a servant for her demanding mother, she chose to drag Julian down with her. Isabella was still the same Isabella. Peel away the glamorous exterior, and you'll find a coward who is always waiting for someone else to save her. Soon, her verdict came out. 6 years. She requested to see me in prison, and I agreed. When we met again, both Isabella and I were very calm. She was genuinely remorseful now. I was wrong, she said. I betrayed you. This is what I deserve. Yes, I think so too, I replied. We sat in silence. Just as I was about to leave, Isabella called out to me. Why? She asked. Weren't you here to save me? I was your whole reason for staying in this world. Why would you do this to me? I stayed in this world for you, but my brain isn't broken, I said, standing up and looking down at her. Isabella, I can love others because I know how to love myself first. Sacrificing myself for someone who harms me isn't redemption, it's being a doormat. I won't do that. Since you didn't want to cherish what I gave you, I took it back. It's that simple. Meeting Isabella's gaze, I smiled. Look, you're just back where you would have been if I hadn't helped you. Penniless and alone. Oh, and your mother is still seriously ill. I looked at her and said with a grin, your true love Julian didn't want to take care of your mother and tried to leave. Your mother wouldn't let him, and during the struggle she was pushed, fell, and is now paralyzed from a stroke. Isabella, you'll have a heavy burden to bear when you get out. Of course, Julian didn't get a happy ending either. Your mother, afraid he would find someone else and leave you, slashed his face and spread rumors everywhere about him being a homewrecker. Now no one will hire him. One is paralyzed, the other is disfigured. Isabella, you'll have a heavy burden to bear when you get out. With that, I smiled and left, leaving Isabella to scream and rage in her cell. Honestly, if Isabella had been resilient enough, she might have been able to start over after 6 years. Of course, 6 years was also enough time for me to become even more powerful. I was waiting to see if Isabella would dare to face me again after her release, but I never expected her to lack even that much courage. In her 3rd month in prison, Isabella killed herself. The tragic heroine who could only find true love and hardship had her life cut short. When her mother heard the news, she was overcome with grief and clung to life on her sickbed for another half a month before finally passing away. It was the disfigured Julian who pulled her oxygen tube shortly after her death. Julian was also arrested. Their stories were over, and me, the tragic savior, I lost my love and was left with a pile of unspendable money and a promising career. Alas, I suppose I'll have to spend the rest of my life in the company of money and ambition.